This is the one button game jam. It has one rule, you have to make a game with only one button. Now you might be asking, does that mean up, down, left, right and one button? No. Okay, does that mean you can have mouse movement? Again, no. You get only one button, and by one, I mean all, because they all do the same thing because that's easier to code. Now, I wanted to join this jam, but first I had to finish up my 2-color game video, which made numbers go up a lot, and then I decided to try and make a game for this and spent nearly 6 hours on it in one day, so here's how that went. First, I needed an idea, and I decided on the most common trope for these games. The character always runs, and the button makes you jump. Sure, it's simple, but it works well. With an idea, I then needed assets and found this pack. It's very simple and has everything I'll need for this project. With the idea and assets collected, I began working on the game. I started with the little guy. First, I added in the movement. Initially, I had it run and only change direction if you pressed the button. When you did, the player would jump and change direction. Then I altered it, so when you pressed space at a corner, you just changed direction and didn't jump. Before I realized that was stupid and just let the auto running and changing direction happen by itself. Next, I added in a double jump because what platform is complete without a double jump, and began working on the actual level. I got these platforms and then decided to add in saw blades to make it more interesting. I made the saw blades kill you and then have you respawn at the start of the game to make it more difficult. Plus, I was too lazy to add in a checkpoint system that works well. Next, I started work on this green section, and after making a jump that you have to go under for, I added in these screens that launch you. Took a bit of time to get them working right, although that isn't the main gimmick of this level. This is slime, or as it's called in the assets, mud, because we all know mud is green. Now, one thing that kept slipping into builds was little skips. Best example of this is right at the start here. Instead of going up these steps and jumping over the saw blades, you can do a double jump right here and skip that whole part, saving a good second once you know what you're doing. And there are many more throughout the game, although don't expect me to tell you all of them. After adding mud, I decided stationary saw blades were lame and boring, so I added in some moving ones. I wrote some simple code and then it can now move up and down, and this works really well with the slime, as you can time yourself to avoid getting hit by the blade. I also decided that just 2 swords in the first area wasn't nearly enough, so I added a bunch more, one on this corner, but not this one, along with a few here, so you have to do a tricky double jump to get past them. All good stuff. Now, if you're enjoying the video so far, make sure to like and subscribe because only 1% of people who watch my videos are subscribed, and doing so would help me out a lot. Anyway, back to the video. With the swamp area complete, I needed a new gimmick for the next level, and I decided on floating platforms. These will float in place until the player jumps off them, falling to the ground, which makes them great for this jump here where you have to let the platforms fall so you can go on the springs. And before you say, well, can't you just jump up there? No, you can't, I put a saw there. Now, after having the springs in 2 previous levels, I decided it was the perfect time to dedicate a whole level to them. But this level doesn't really have a correct path, because the sprints launch you a lot further than I initially thought they did, and this was only made worse as each time I added something new you would get thrown around a lot more, ruining every previous part, but they all came together towards the end in the lead up to the final challenge of the game. Now, unlike the previous levels, I decided against adding in anything new, mainly because I couldn't find anything good in the asset pack for a final level, at least any that would make any sense for the game, as stuff like friends and enemies work a lot better when you have actual control over the player, instead of just jump. So with this in mind, I just decided on a level that would use all the obstacles used so far. Screens like once or twice, a bunch of floating platforms because they're great for this sort of stuff, and of course saw blades with both stationary and moving ones, mixed in slime and moving ones here, and for the final jump, a bunch of floating platforms with the moving saw blade that I almost placed too low, so that if you jump wrong time, you just die. So I moved it above the screen because I'm not that evil. Now that the game's complete, I just had to add in a few things to make it actually complete. First, I needed an actual background because blank screens are terrible for stuff like this, so I added in the background images included in the asset pack because I'm too lazy to do a background like this myself, especially with all the different levels and different designs. So I got these squares and filled in each layer with them. That turned out looking way better than I expected, mainly because each one has a complementary color. Yeah, I know how to color. Next, I needed an actual end screen because falling into a void isn't very fun. So I got it to detect when the player enters this box and it keeps them still. Although this doesn't work for too long because this can happen, so I also set move X and move Y to 0 and it works now. Next was something that took up half of my last game, leaderboards, and now I know how they work. It'll be easy. I just have to import the add-on, create a manager and write its code, upload the scores, and boom, done. There will be no further issues. Next was a title screen. I decided to do something a bit more interesting as a lot of my title screens are pretty boring. Just background image, title, start button, and recently a leaderboard. So I made this one more interesting. I added a 2-stage system. The top is grass, where the best score will be displayed, with the rest being beneath it. Then I put in some moving saw blades, a few sprints, and a player that cannot jump because that would ruin everything. I added in the start button and copied in the code to change the leaderboard name, and it doesn't work. After coming across this issue, I triple checked the code and tried everything before I realized the manager object wasn't in the room, so it would be impossible for it to update anything. So that was something, but surely there won't be any more issues. I got the game to display the player's time, and after doing a flawless run, it still displayed the same score. Turns out I set it to ascending, not descending, meaning a slower run was better, so that was fixed pretty easily. Next was sound effects and music, and this one was easy. I've made so many of these that I just have a bunch already on my computer, so I put them in and the game's complete. And that's the game. I don't know how, but I was able to do this in literally less than a day, whilst the 2-color game took longer and I spent less time on it. Now, as always, the game is available on my itch.io page, and you can find it through the pinned comment or in the description. You can play it, and it should work on mobile devices, although web builders are often picky with what they consider touch inputs, so don't shoot me if I'm wrong. I also want to give a congratulations to this guy, Vireth, who was able to beat my highest score on Rooftop Run, so congrats, your prize is bragging rights in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe as it helps out the channel a lot. And whilst you're there, make sure to check out how I made a game that uses only 2 colors, or you can see how I did in a game jam I did previously, and I'll see you next time.